Mr. Pickens, let's assume that you do have an interest in Peachtree. Why are you in this business of investing in companies, taking over companies?
To make money.
That's it?
Well, that is a primary reason that you would. I see my role as one that I'm a fiduciary. I have to do the best I can with the capital I have available to me.
What do you call yourself?
I'm a geologist.
A geologist? Sir James, are you a geologist too?
I'm a grocer.
You're a grocer. Is it unfair to call Sir James? Is it unfair to call you a raider? Is that a name you like?
That's one of the things I do.
You have any name you prefer?
You can choose the name you like.
I prefer another name.
Yes?
Large investor that sometimes becomes active.
A large investor. Sir James, when you decide what businesses to be in, though, what are the things that drive you personally?
They're quite different things. You can do something because it's a startup. You see an opportunity, you see the right group of people, and you want to back them. That is a startup, and it works or it doesn't work depending on the judgment of the opportunity and the people. But then you have the opposite thing. You have somebody's mistake of the past. And when there's somebody's mistake of the past, the market must be free to clean up that mistake. And let me explain to you what I mean. During the 1960s, the fashion was to conglomerate. That wasn't industry. The purpose of conglomeration was to build big groups by financial use of market multiples. And they couldn't do it in an integrated way because the law stopped it in antitrust, so they had to go out and conglomerate. So they created these extraordinary contraptions of multi-industry companies. They did companies
that did a wide
range
every kind of thing.
They went from making socks to making electronic engines to making aerospace to whatever you like. Anything. These conglomerates didn't work. Now, there are two ways in which you can handle that. You can either enshrine them, ossify them, make them into a monument, and all go and say, wonderful, they didn't work, but they're there, just like a monument. And then you have inefficient industry forever. Or you can say, let the market free, and let the market cleanse itself. And somebody, instead of a startup, as I was talking about before, has to go and do a re-startup, which is go in there, cleanse through market action a structure which was wrong, liberate the pieces so they can become valid companies, and of course make a profit in the same time.
And that is
just as constructive a thing to do as the start-off by which I started.
And you're the cleansing agent?
On some occasions.
It's like the Ajax of the corporate.
And I'm also the initiator, and I am the Ajax, yes. And I believe you take over companies that need something. I do not know of a well-managed company that is being taken over by force. I only know of those that have not been good. And by the way, well-managed companies have got better because of the fear of being taken over, because they have to keep running. But if you take away that fear, they'll just go down the drain like the bad.
I want to know why you do it. Is it to clean it up? Or is it, as Mr. Pickens said, for the money? Or is it both?
Look, if I'm in business, it's for money. I hope that's the best reason for anybody to be in business, because it sounds lovely. What does a demagogue say? The demagogue will tell you that he's in business for all these constituencies of suppliers, communities, employees, and everything else. That's not true. And if it's true, it's a mistake. Whereas if you go the other way and start talking this nonsense about what we've got to do, we're in this business for our employees only, you're going to featherbed, you're going to become uncompetitive, and you're going to let them all down. It's pure demagoguery.
And Mr. Flom, if they ask you to describe what the company's options are, what do you say?
Well, first, in these meetings, you explain to the board what their duties and responsibilities are.
What are they?
They are to consider the offer in good faith, to consider what the interests of the shareholders are, and you've got to recognize that the shareholders are not a single entity. I mean, there are all kinds of shareholders. You would point out that the investment banker will be advising them on whether this offer is fair, more than fair, or unfair. Now, you know, if somebody offers you just what your house is worth, there's no reason to sell it. If somebody offers you more than it's worth, then maybe you've got a different kind of look.
Mayor Golden, suppose you have just retired as the mayor. Still have the same interests in that plant, in that community. Still have the same concerns about what Sir James's plans making this company more efficient might mean for Plum Valley. But you're no longer the mayor, you're on the board.
I now have an institutional duty. I have a corporate duty. I have other interests as a citizen, like I have duties as a father and as a husband.
That's my
and as
question.
a friend.
Can you bring those other interests to this board meeting?
Well, I'm not unmindful of them, but I recognize that the primacy of my duty is to shareholders, because that is the institutional role that I'm now discharging. And therefore, I can do nothing, in my view, to vindicate those other interests, those other roles that I play, which in any way dilutes or detracts from this institutional obligation that I have as a director.
Mr. Flom, is he right?
The answer is that he is absolutely right. The
His
primary
first obligation to the shareholder.
Yes. Now, there are some states which have now passed laws saying that the board of directors can take into account other constituencies, in which case the decision-making process is different. There are some corporations which have such a provision in their charter, which again would change the thing.
Should he be able to come into that board meeting and balance the shareholders' interests against these community interests?
I think the answer is the shareholders should have the say, not the board of directors, because the board of directors is in there to mind the store, not to determine whether to sell the store ultimately.
Dean Thoreau, what should the rules be?
Well, see, I think here Boone is right. There's no evidence that if the current manager of this company gets fired because he's been incompetent, that you're going to close the local facility. And so I don't know yet that I have any conflict between my interest in the local community and my, because as a director, in some sense, I don't have an obligation to the president to preserve his job.
Mr. Buffett, if you were on this board and you were a substantial shareholder, what would you want the directors to do?
I would look at all the options for the company at that point. It would depend on the shareholder base. It would depend on other people that might be interested. It would depend on what I thought that the possibilities of the company were over a long period of time. And in the end, I would try and do the best thing for the shareholders. But
for the shareholders?
Yeah.
If I'm stipulating that the community is going to be hurt because their plans include closing that plant and they think that's a good business decision, the problem of who protects that community ought to be somewhere else, not in that boardroom. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think if you want to put it to the shareholders and say that in making your decision on whether to accept this offer, you should consider the fact that Mr. Pickens' offer closes the plant. And if we continue running it, it won't be closed, and we'd like you to vote on that.
Senator Wirth, as a board member, what should your responsibility be?
I'm not on the board because I'm an investment banker or a very smart lawyer. I'm on the board because I'm president of the university and because the shareholders have some value in my being able to go to Washington and maybe foul up Boone Pickens a bit. There is also a deep relationship between Peachtree and the university and the community. And so I have an obligation, and I'm on the board not only to represent those shareholders, but also to represent the university and the community. I'm not there because I'm a financial guru. I'm there because I represent other constituencies that were referred to early on. As a result, before I go along with whatever this may be, I'm going to want to have whoever it is come in and talk to them, find out, and make my best judgment as to what I think they're going to do. I think there are a variety of other values that are at stake in this as well.
So that if you could design the rules, if you could write the laws in the state or in Washington,
the laws have been written by this corporation in asking me to come on the board, and so I'm going to reflect my responsibilities not only to the shareholders but to the community that I'm on the board to represent.
Mr. Lyman, what should they be doing in that boardroom?
I don't see how a board elected by shareholders can be expected to protect, for example, the interests of a community or the interests in diversity in the economy. That perhaps has to come from the rules of the game that are established by government, by democratic processes. I think boards have to represent the shareholders.
Senator Wirth?
We have been arguing, it seems to me, for almost 100 years in this country about the responsibilities that corporations have to their communities. And we have tried for a long time to get corporations more responsible. We've now done it at Peachtree. We're reaching out, supporting this university, supporting cultural activities and so on. We are the ultimate of what America believes corporate responsibility is. And you lawyers from Wall Street are coming in and telling us what to do with our community and our responsibilities. Now we're going to make it as difficult as we possibly can for you to get this to happen.
Now the question is, how do you fight it? And you gather together your team again. Mr. Flom, what are their options?
Well, you have a number of possibilities. First, you got to decide whether you can recast the company in terms of making a self-tender, acquiring shares.
Buying some of your own shares?
Buying some of your own shares.
To buy in your own shares. In other words, whether you can compete with them by going yourself directly to the shareholders.
That coupled with what kind of operating economies you can effectuate. That's one alternative.
In other words, get into an economic contest with them for the hearts and minds of the shareholders.
And the dollars.
And the dollars. What else?
The company can consider whether it wants to run an auction and decide to be sold to the highest bidder.
Anything else?
Yes. You can enter into an agreement with a third party to buy a percentage of your stock when, say, it's a blocking position. On an economic basis, which is satisfactory.
How about anything with them?
Which gives you a chance to realize the long-term values that you see. Now,
what about dealing with them?
You could decide to deal with them, and the decision of dealing with them covers the whole thing. You could try to buy them out, which is what is commonly called greenmail.
What's called greenmail?
Buying them
their
out.
Shares?
Yes.
By paying them more than they could get and selling it in the market?
That's correct.
That's
or,
greenmail.
in some cases, by paying them what they can get in the market because the market is artificially high based on the announcement that they're going to pay $30 for the company.
Well, no, sir, I don't agree with anything here. We're living in a time warp. This is a conversation we could have had 2 years ago or a year ago. It is nothing to do with the situation as it exists today. And Joe Flom is one of the best lawyers in the world and knows it as well as I do. How do you defend today? You don't defend on economic grounds. You don't defend on being able to get a better offer. You defend by being able to go to Washington and to be able to get the Senate and the Congress, either who believe in the sort of stuff that Senator Worth believes in, which he's just talked about, which is a pastoral America with a little company and the church and the university, and the whole thing is going to stay there and be there forever, and that they don't have to compete with anybody, and that competition is awful, and totally mixing up. Wait a minute, totally mixing up. This is the fundament. The difference between doing business and doing good. Doing business is what gives you the fuel to do good. Don't mix them up. The bee doesn't make honey because he's doing good. He doesn't have soul searching, am I doing good when I make honey? And he's confusing it, and that's why this country is losing its vigor.
Mr. Mercer, is he describing your strategy?
No, I've got a problem with that whole thing. We do have to go to Washington to make sure that they maintain states' rights, because the states have the
so you can go to the state legislature
so we
to
can
stop
go to
them.
the state legislature and talk about a specific
Is he right that you're going to go to the
state
Is he right that you're going to go to the
want
politicians to stop them?
You have to determine whether or not you want to maintain an economic base in this country, or let it get eroded by people who want to come in and buy you out with your own assets and break up the company and have it disappear so you become a second, third, or fourth-rate country. I don't think we can allow that to happen.
And that's a political debate you want to have with
It's more than a political
Senator
debate.
Worth?
It's an economic debate, and it's an economic fact of life. Now, I understand where Mr. Goldsmith is coming from, and he comes in as a self-appointed savior of our economy. But we are competitive, and we are internationally competitive, and the only way we stay that way is through reinvestment in research and development in new plant facilities. And if we have to spend all of our money in fending off attacks, we're not going to be around to do that.
I must answer that attack. What I was trying to do is to make it abundantly clear what happens in a board meeting, which you were pretending to have just now.
Yes.
And you were living in a charade, nonsense, nothing to do with reality. When a company such as this gets under trouble, it sends its lawyers to its state legislature, it drafts the law. It doesn't leave it to the legislators, it drafts it. Their own firm of lawyers drafts it. It gets it through that legislature, it does a deal with the governor to sign it as it comes out. It is a political contest. And all this other stuff is a load of eyewash.
Do you go to the legislature to block this, as Sir James says?
What I would do is to turn that around in my community, have an interview with Ms. Quinn, get that out right away, and I would have so many outraged people in the state of Minnesota or in this particular community that they would be setting you up to run you out of town on a rail.
Sir James?
Well, I think we've proven it here. Listen to what the strategy was. The strategy, the words being used by John Goodfriend, the banker to this company. Cut out the extra overhead. Cut out the companies that are unnecessary. Close the obsolete factories.
That's what you want them to do.
That was the defense. Now, what happens if there's no one there to prod that defense? Supposing all these managements were enshrined, that no one, you could never get rid of them. They were totally entrenched. Why would they ever have to do that? The only reason that board has considered these things, which they've been paid to do for years, is because they're under attack. Take away, as our politician friends want to do, the capacity to attack, and those fellows will never do it. And you'll have more and more obsolete factories, and you'll have more and more overheads, and you'll become more and more uncompetitive, and you'll want to devalue more and more to get competitive.
And the plant in Plum Valley, and the people who work there?
If it's a good plant, and it's working efficiently, it will remain and become a better plant, because you would have done a remarkable thing, which is marry management and capitalism. Our friend Mr. Berry over there said he was a major shareholder in his company. He is. He was a professional manager, and he's a hell of a lot better professional manager today now that he's a capitalist at the same time.
And if
that marriage is the greatest life-giving thing economy can have.
And if you decide that that plant is inefficient, and after you buy the company you close it?
Then you have to close it, either modernize it, either make it efficient, or if you can't make it efficient, of course it's got to be closed.
And who deals?
What are you running, a charity or business?